Hello. Walking on water is a really iconic concept. It's something that's almost universally recognised, a phrase that's used way beyond church, way beyond people who have any association with Jesus. It's really come into the global folklore as a concept for doing something impossible, for doing something amazing. People say, it's like he's walking on water. Or she thinks she's walking on water, which is perhaps not quite so complimentary. But all of that comes from Jesus' story that he did walk across the water to his friends. And that's the reading for this week. Now, I have to admit, I'm not that fond of water. I don't really like getting wet. I don't really like swimming and stuff like that. And this picture of me when I was slightly younger creates a certain amount of teasing in the family because of the degree of PPE that I seem to need for a trip to the beach. In my defence, I have to say that this particular beach was Bridlington in November, and if you've been to Bridlington in November, you might understand the need for some degree of protection at least. Anyway, joking aside, walking on water is our theme this week, and we're going to hear the reading of the story of Jesus walking on the water from Matthew's Gospel and chapter 14.
Jesus went up the hill by himself to pray. It had grown late, and he was there alone. The boat was already some distance from the shore, battling with a headwind and a rough sea. Between 3 and 6 in the morning he came towards them, walking across the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were so shaken that they cried out in terror, "It's a ghost!" But at once Jesus spoke to them. "Take heart. It is I. Do not be afraid." Peter called to him, "Lord, if it is you, tell me to come to you over the water." "Come," said Jesus. Peter got down out of the boat and walked over the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strength of the gale, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, "Save me, Lord!" Jesus at once reached out and caught hold of him. "Why did you hesitate?" he said. "How little faith you have." They climbed into the boat, and the wind dropped, and the men in the boat fell at his feet, exclaiming, "You must be the Son of God."
On the other hand, as I pointed out right at the beginning, this is one of the most iconic things that he did, and so perhaps there was a point to it in the wider scheme of things from that sense. But as we heard in the reading, this made an enormous impact on the people who witnessed walking on water. Walking on water is not supposed to be possible because the surface tension of an area of water equivalent to your footprints is nowhere near adequate for actually supporting your weight. Even if the water is very salty, and that could have been the case in this particular story, which can help you to float in the water, but walking on it, no, it doesn't do it. The only liquid that you might have some chance of walking on would be liquid mercury, and that's much too poisonous to try, so we're definitely not going to go there. But of course the reason as to why that might be possible is that it's a much denser liquid than water. So, generally speaking, supporting a human being to walk on any kind of liquid, more or less, certainly to walk on water, is not a feasible prospect. But Jesus decided to do this quite amazing thing as part of this story of teaching the people around him. Now, of course, teaching aids, metaphors, examples are really important, and those of us who are into teaching in one way or another would all recognise that. You're always looking for good, memorable, easy to understand examples. But even so, walking on water seems a bit extreme. It worked, though, in the sense that some of the people round about him reacted by saying, "Huh? This must be the Son of God." In other words, God himself, basically. And maybe it was that important moment of recognition that was really important. The story occurred, of course, before crucifixion, when Jesus was going around teaching and so on. So, it's not like some of the post-resurrection appearances when Jesus came into locked rooms and that kind of thing that we were looking at after Easter. There's no doubt that at this point in the story, Jesus was an absolutely flesh and blood human being. So this was truly remarkable. But there's more behind this story than simply what at first sight might look like a party trick of walking across the water. Jesus was also bringing peace and calm into troubled situations. Although these relatively small water bodies in the areas where he was living were not massive as in big oceans, they are nevertheless well known for being quite stormy sometimes. And of course a lot of fishermen and ferrymen and so on in those days would have quite basic boats, so the calmness of the water would actually be pretty important, not difficult to capsize and have serious consequences. So the calmness, the stillness that Jesus brought to this body of water before he walked on it was also, I think, a really important part of the story, although that's not always emphasised so much as the actual walking on it. It's incredible to think how it could have happened, and to be honest, trying to work out the physics of the situation is not a very productive way of thinking about it. What we need to work on is what's the symbolism involved, what's the meaning involved, what are the implications. Clearly, it made Jesus appear really special to the people around him. And that must have been something that was important as part of his journey towards Jerusalem, which he was certainly on by this stage in the story. The other important character in this story is my namesake Peter. Jesus told Peter to come and walk across the water towards him. Now, it's one thing watching somebody walk across water, amazing though that might be, but to actually think that you could possibly step into that same water and walk out and meet somebody who is coming towards you would have been an even bigger stretch of credulity. And Peter decided to try. And it seems there was a degree of success, but then he kind of overthought the situation a bit. He began to doubt that what he was actually doing was actually possible to do. And there's an important message in that for us as well. How often do we think, well, maybe we could do this, or maybe we could do that, and then we think about it a bit more and think, no, there's no way I could manage to do that. And sometimes that's true of things that God asks us to do. We think we can't possibly do it. And so, because of that self-doubt, we actually fail. And we probably get wet in the process, as I think Peter did here. So there's lots of facets to this story. What Jesus did, what Peter did, what the tensions are between faith and doubt in all sorts of things that we do. And yet also finding peace and stillness in and through doing things in faith. So it's a fascinating little story, and I'm sure there's a whole lot more things in there that will occur to you if you take time to read through it and think how it might have applied to things that you have done or things that you haven't done. All part of being human, of being faithful, and of being doubtful. And all of us at different times follow some combinations of those different traits. There's a hymn in Hymns and Psalms which I really like. It's very short and it's very simple. It's number 624 by David Adam. And this is what it says. Calm me, Lord, as you calmed the storm. Still me, Lord, keep me from harm. Let all the tumult within me cease. Enfold me, Lord, enfold me in your peace. I think those are powerful words for our current times. We know, one way or another, that the whole world is in a time of tumult and storm for different reasons. And there's perhaps never been a time when we're more in need of saying to Jesus, "Enfold me, Lord, in your peace."